Coming to you from the Deep South, this is the Blue Collar Leadership Podcast. High impact leadership is not reserved for leaders, and it has nothing to do with your position, title, or rank. However, it does have everything to do with your character. It's time to climb to the next level and beyond, personally and professionally. Now, let's start making it happen with your host, Mac Story.
Hello, and thanks for stopping by the Blue Collar Leadership Podcast today. Today, I want to talk to you about the trait Be Understanding, which is trait 21 of 30 in this 30-part series on my book, Blue Collar Leadership and Teamwork, 30 Traits of High Impact Players. So Be Understanding is the trait we're going to focus on today. The subtitle is Seek to Understand What Others Are Seeing and Feeling. So high impact players seek to understand what others are seeing, feeling, and experiencing. They're empathic. Doesn't mean that they're trying to agree with anybody, but it means they're trying to understand everybody. Daniel Goleman had these words. He says, empathy, another ability that builds on emotional self-awareness, is a fundamental people skill. You got to care. You got to care before you can be understanding. That's another one of my weaknesses back in the old days. It still is. It's one of the hardest ones for me, is to seek first to understand, because I lived the majority of my life just trying to be understood. And I didn't really care what other people thought. You'll hear a lot of people say they don't care what other people think as they continuously live their lives worried about what everybody thinks. The only person they're fooling is themselves. You probably met some of these folks. Hopefully you're not one of those folks. But you deal with, interact with enough people, you'll learn that they're out there. So there's a difference between sympathy and empathy. A lot of people who've never studied these concepts, these principles, they kind of think they're the same thing. But the Merriam-Webster online dictionary states the difference in meaning is usually explained with some variation of the following. Sympathy is when you share the feelings of another. Empathy is when you understand the feelings of another, but do not necessarily share them. That's why I was saying a moment ago, when you're seeking to understand, doesn't mean you're agreeing or disagreeing. But people who've never been understood, or people who have a strong desire to be understood in any given moment, when they feel understood, they automatically, most often, think that the other person agrees with them. The other person may disagree 100%. They can empathize without agreeing at all. Sympathy means, though, you share the feelings. So if somebody's mad at someone, if you're sympathizing with them, you're mad at that person too. But if you're empathizing with them, you can seek to understand why they're actually mad at the other person. And if you have a discussion around it, and you're not, if you're kind of neutral, which you should be if you're trying to understand, then they could take it to mean that you're with them. But be understanding. If you want to be a high impact team player, you got to be understanding. Understanding a teammate is much different than agreeing or disagreeing with a teammate. Teammates who aren't normally listened to, as I mentioned, about people in general, but it's also your teammates. They often mistake another's understanding as agreement. So let me just ask you now, that question I always ask you. The boss is going to add a person to your team. 2 people. He's narrowed, not 2 people to your team, but he's narrowed the list of candidates down to 2 people. He's going to hire one of the 2. You get to decide. He tells you they're both rock stars as far as he can tell. But there's one thing he knows about each of them for sure that makes them different. And he tells you one of these people, again, they're fully competent. They can do the job. They can make things happen. They got skills. They got knowledge. They got abilities. All of that basically equal. But he said there's one big difference. One of these people wants to understand other people. They seek first to understand others before attempting to be understood by others. They want to let others go first. And then one of them, they always want to go first. They want other people to understand them. And they're not even concerned with understanding other people. So you get to pick one of these 2 people. One of them seeks to understand others, empathize with them. The other person wants everyone else to come to them and understand them, and they don't even care about understanding anyone else. Which one you going to tell the boss to hire? I bet you it's going to be the one who attempts to understand others. You see, every week when we go through this little scenario, the answer is so easy. It's so clear. There's no question that these traits will launch you to the next level and beyond. They will increase your influence. They will build trust. They will allow you to connect with others. But it's easy to see them when you're looking out the window. But as I've mentioned before, not so easy to look in the mirror. You know, would your team say you're understanding? Would they say you're more likely to seek to understand them first? Or do you come across as you're just wanting to be understood and really don't care about their opinion? Especially if you're a leader, a formal authority leader. It's a big deal. If you're in a formal authority leadership position, all of these traits, highly, highly important for you to unleash your team's potential. They're critical also if you're not in a formal position of authority. Because this is how you grow and develop your influence with others around you. So to truly move beyond communication and to making a connection, well, let me say it a different way. To truly move beyond communication to connection while trying to understand, and I mentioned this a few episodes ago, it related to something I was sharing then, but you got to learn to squint with your ears and listen with your eyes. To better understand, listen and look for meaning between the words. The only way you can do that is if you squint with your ears and really listen to what the person's saying and how they're saying it. So squint with your ears, and then at the same time, you're going to be listening with your eyes. While you're doing that, you're watching body language, expressions, all that sort of stuff. What kind of energy is the other person expressing? So, because see, the easiest way to influence a teammate is to allow them to first influence you. You see, when you transfer an influence allows you to gain influence. That's what you got to know about this trait. I'll say it again. Transferring influence allows you to gain influence. And see, when you seek to understand other people first, when that's your goal, when that's the character trait you're exhibiting, especially if there's high emotion. You know, if somebody's angry, they're mad, they're sad, they're frustrated, they're irritated, you know, all those bad emotions. Whenever that's going on, transferring influence allows you to gain influence. And the way you transfer the influence in those high energy emotional situations is you allow others to influence you. You do that by choosing to understand them first. See, a lot of time when there's a lot of friction between people, especially, it doesn't matter if it's at home or at work. I was going to say especially at work because I'm kind of talking about work relative to this book and this content, but it applies at home too. But a lot of times when there's friction at work, I talk to a lot of people who are learning my content. Their organizations are trying to transform the culture, or some of them are really great already and they're just trying to improve the culture. And a lot of times, those folks who are really hungry, who are leading the pack, tip of the spear kind of people, I call them, they're out front. They fired up. They're reading. They're listening to podcasts. They're watching videos. They're learning. They're applying. They're trying to apply it at work. They're trying to apply it at home. But a lot of times there's a lot of friction. And because the people who are ahead start to realize that everybody else is doing it wrong. Because to begin with, they first had to understand themselves, and they realized they were doing it wrong. That's why they're tip of the spear. They're out front. They've already learned, I've been doing it wrong. When I discovered this stuff in 2008, when I say stuff, I'm talking about personal growth, leadership development, content. When I first dove into it, I picked out the things I was doing right, gave myself a pat on the back. But it didn't take very long at all. I'm talking about really, really quick to realize, hey, I'm doing a lot of this stuff wrong. I got to make changes. I got to change at the core. And I did. And I still do. I'm still working on it. Before, I was just kind of zipping through life. I just thought a lot of people were idiots. A lot of people were not. What I didn't know is I was an idiot. But as I started growing and figuring out I was the idiot, I was the biggest idiot in my life, was me. Then I started making changes. I started learning and applying these principles and started realizing, hey, these things, this is good stuff. They're for real. You apply this stuff, you get the results. You apply these principles, you get the right outcome. So then I did what people do. I started looking out the window. Now I knew more. Now I had applied more. I had learned what other people didn't even know. I actually knew. Then when I would tell them, they didn't know, and they didn't know they didn't know. They thought they did know. So then you start getting into the arguments. You start feeling frustrated with people. But when I first got going, I just wanted to tell everybody how they needed to be. And then when they didn't want to be that way, I thought they were idiots. What I didn't know is I still was an idiot. I thought I had moved beyond being the idiot, but now I realize everybody else was an idiot. What I didn't know is I was still the idiot. Well, it took me a long time to really get past that. I still get frustrated with all the people who don't understand the stuff I teach. But for the most part, I do it silently in my head. They don't know about it because I'm better now. Used to, I would tell everybody about it, and everybody would just know about it because of my behavior, because of my energy, because of my expressions, because maybe I didn't connect with people. Maybe I didn't even communicate with people well. But see, I'm better now. One way I try to understand people, or I am understanding, I know it takes time. I know some people don't want to learn this stuff. Some people are never going to learn this stuff. Some people who even want to learn it, they working or living in a bad environment, and everything is against them. That's a bad, bad place to be, and it's a hard place to be. For example, some people learn this stuff at work. Nobody else at work's learning it. It's not a corporate-wide or company-wide initiative. Somebody just discovers this content, my content or someone else's. Nobody at work's on board. Well, these folks usually become pretty frustrated pretty quick at work. Good thing about that is they can easily go change their job. Then they're probably going to find out the same thing. These other people are the same way. Then they'll change jobs again. If you want to thrive, if you learn and understand this stuff, there's a good chance you're going to have to move from company to company about it every 1 to 2 years. Once you go in there and you learn what you need to learn, and the new wears off, and you kind of start hitting your head against the lid, you're going to probably want to move on. Unless you're part of a formal authority, top-down led transformation, then you may want to stay and help. But see, there's another piece of this. Some people experience this, some don't. It depends on their personal situation. But sometimes people who are in a relationship with someone else, they could be married or not married, doesn't make a difference about that part. But someone who's in a close relationship with someone else, the one person could dive into this content. It could be presented at work and they buy in and latch on, or it could be something they just latch on to on their own and start applying it at work and at home. But it doesn't take very long. If the other person in the relationship at home isn't interested, there's a real good chance that relationship's going to head south if the person learning is not understanding. See, like Rhea and I, we've been growing together since 2008. Both of us grow. But let's say Rhea didn't grow. Let's say she was not interested in 2008. It was just a coincidence that we both got interested in 2008 for two completely different reasons. And really, I didn't really understand that she was interested. I'm sure she was probably slightly ahead of me, but I got interested, and so she kind of knew about it. But I didn't really know when she did for a little while. She kind of told me, but I didn't understand yet because I was behind her. But let's say I only got interested and she was not interested, and she never was interested. Obviously, we could stay together or we could drift apart. The biggest thing that would be related to would be me. If I was understanding, if I knew I was growing and she wasn't, and I could empathize and understand her feelings and why she wasn't on board and moving forward and hungry for growth. She doesn't have to be for me to still love her and want to be with her. Obviously, yes, if I'm into this, I would want her growing and going with me. But a lot of people who learn this content, but they don't really, really learn it, instead of helping them in their relationships, whether it's at work or at home, it actually hurts them. Because they think they know way more than they know. They think their problems with everyone else is caused by everyone else. I've had people learn this content who had a great relationship at work or at home. Then they start learning this content, and then they don't have a good relationship at home or with the people they work with. They start looking out the window and thinking it's them. The other people is what I'm talking about. They don't look in the mirror and realize it's me. It's how I'm learning this content and what I'm doing with this content, how I'm applying and using and leveraging this content in my life. Because again, most people look out the window. Most of the time when they think they're looking in the mirror, they're still looking out the window. So again, transferring influence allows you to gain influence. One way to transfer influence is to ask questions. When you're into deep understanding, you don't need to ask questions, though. You need to reflect feeling, rephrase content, mimic content. You kind of want to be a sounding board for the other person. When you're truly trying to be understanding in a tough, emotional situation, you really don't want to ask questions. You want to reflect feeling. Be a sounding board. Let them know you're understanding how they're seeing it, how they're feeling it, and all that sort of stuff. You don't want to ask questions. You don't want to probe. You don't want to give advice. All that stuff we normally do when we think we're trying to listen. You really can't do that if you're trying to truly empathic listening. And if you really want to learn about this, do some research. Grab the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People book. Dive into habit 5, which is seek first to understand, then be understood. or do a Google search, YouTube, find some videos. There's all kind of stuff out there about 7 habits. Habit 5, seek first to understand and be understood. But if you just bought that book, skipped all the rest of the book, and just read habit 5 and learned to apply it really well, and it's the hardest of the 7 habits to apply, but you'll learn, you really, really make a mission out of learning to apply habit 5, your life's going to get a whole lot better at home and at work. What you'll quickly learn, though, is it's going to take a whole lot of other learning for you to be able to apply that one. And Dr. Covey, who wrote that book, says that's the hardest one to learn, is that habit. Hardest one to learn, hardest one to apply. I agree 100%. Been 15 years since I was exposed to it, and it's still hard. But it can launch you to the next level in relationships. That's why high impact players who can do this, highly, highly influential on their teams. And imagine if you got the whole team trying to be understanding, instead of a whole team trying to be understood, which happens most often. If you were growing and developing people and everybody's trying to be understood, well, a lot of those emotional situations go away. Because the number one reason most of those emotional situations, especially ones related to frustration, irritation, and anger, that kind of stuff, is because somebody's trying to feel understood. Somebody wants to feel understood, wants to be understood, but nobody's trying to understand them. It could be the boss or a coworker, or it could be the boss and somebody who reports to the boss. It's 360 degrees from wherever you're at. If you're trying to get one way to tell when people are trying to be understood, but they're not, is they get louder and they get madder. They get more angry. I've seen people talking and one of them saying, I hear you, I hear you. Another one's getting louder and louder. See, I hear you doesn't reflect feeling or rephrase content. It's not a mirror. I'm trying to get you to be quiet so I can talk to you. I got something to say. I hear you, I'm with you. I got you. And then start talking. And the other person's getting louder because they don't feel understood yet. And they don't want to hear nothing you got to say because they don't think it's based on the right understanding. So then when you actually talking, they ain't listening either. So you're not listening, they're not listening, nobody's listening. Nobody's seeking to understand. But low impact players focus all of their energy on being understood. Understanding others is like I used to be. It wasn't even on my radar. It didn't matter how angry I had to get. I'd go there in about half a second. I definitely was not the one trying to understand. I was all focused on being understood. I was a low impact player at work, on my work team, and in life with my family. I was pathetic. You want to know the truth? I'm better now, but I was pathetic then. But I didn't know it. Everybody else knew it. Now I'm better, and a lot of people don't know it because a lot of them people don't talk to me anymore. But they're still living the life, that they used to live, and I'm living my life now, and that relationship has been long gone. But I do apologize to a lot of those folks when I come across them for whatever reason. But low impact players focus all of their energy on being understood. They want to go first. And as I mentioned, I got to say it again, because when you're watching people interact, so you can train yourself a little bit on this subject just by watching others. Because like I said, it's easy to tell when they don't feel understood. They get louder, more animated, and more frustrated. And when neither one of them are trying to be understanding, and both are trying to be understood, they get really angry. I mean, they just butting heads. Both of them getting louder. Both of them getting more animated. Both of them getting more frustrated. Some point, they may get physical. Some point, one of them may kill the other one. It happens. So you want to be a high impact leader. You want to be a high impact team player. You want to be a high impact individual. This is a trait you need to work on. And it's hard. But one reason it's so hard is because it requires so many other traits. You got to master a lot of other traits before you can even start touching this trait. A lot of times you got to master a lot of traits before you can even start on this one, much less master this one. I don't know if you'll ever master it. Some people, maybe they will. I don't know. It's so hard for me. I don't know, but I know there's people who are real good at this. Rhea's really good at this, but she can use some work. I know I can use some work. I really don't know anybody who's good at this that still doesn't need to work on this, because this one is a hard one. And the reason is it shifts so much, because when you're trying to understand other people, they may have values you don't value. If their values are aligned with yours, it's easy to understand them because you naturally already do. If their values are 180 degrees opposite of your values, you may find it hard to understand them, even though you understand that you don't have to agree or disagree while you're trying to understand. But you could be so against it that you can't even see it their way or feel it their way. So I was talking about Rhea a little bit. I want to share with you a quote. And by the way, she's got a great book to help you move beyond communication and connection, go to making a connection. And her book is Straight Talk, The Power of Effective Communication. It's 30 chapters, 3 pages each, formatted like a lot of my books. And it's on audio and paperback, ebook, all that stuff. But that's a book that might help you in interacting with other people. I may do a 30-part series on it one day. Who knows? Just share some of her content and put some of my teaching and my stories with it. But I got plenty of my own books to get through first. And I'm writing other ones, from time to time. So I don't know if I'll ever get there. But Rhea had this to say. She said, when we listen deeply to the other person, we are listening to the words they say and the words they don't say. We are listening to the feelings they are expressing. That's good stuff. It goes right in alignment with what I was talking about previously. Learning how to squint with your ears, listen with your eyes. She said it slightly different, but it's the same thing. That's why you need to learn from different sources. Different people say things different ways. Different people have different stories. But the challenge today is to be understanding. Be understanding. Seek to understand what others are seeing and feeling and experiencing. Talk to you next time.
Make it happen or someone else will. It might as well be you. Are you serious about taking your career and your life to the next level and beyond? Check out Max Story's Blue Collar Leadership series books and others, now available on audio, along with paperback and ebooks at Amazon, iTunes, and Audible. Please visit bluecollarleadership.com to learn about Max books, programs, special offers, certifications, and more. Thank you for listening to the Blue Collar Leadership Podcast.